ubehislapshus. Malchus da Atzilas but Malchus the Bria. It's Daf Ayin Gimel Amud Beis. It's about 11 and 12 lines on the top of the page. Ubehislapshus Malchus da Atzilas but Malchus the Bria. Mislabeshes be'echal gedashim di Yitzira. Now I told you yesterday that the way you have to look at it is that it's like a sort of a hishtalshelus. The first thing that forms is you have tipas ha'av and tipas ha'em, which creates the tipas mayach havlat. Then the first thing that this brain and heart does, meaning the Esses Fetus, is create its own body, its own world. So the diuk of the Tanya here is that there's Shechina. Shechina means this Beis HaMikdash, this Pnimius, this brain and heart has the lowest level. The lowest level is the place of Gilur. There's 10 Sfiras, there's not one Sfira. The 10th of the 10 Sfiras is Malchus, which is an Inyan of Gilui. In Malchus, which is the 10th of the 10th Sfira, which is an Inyan of Gilui, this is where the Shechina is manifest. And that's why it's called Shechina, as opposed to Alma Diskasia. Alma Diskasia is opposed to Alma Diskasia. This Malchus, this Shechina, which is the lowest of the 10 Sfiras, then goes ahead and creates its own world. After it creates its own world, it creates its own Nevrayim. This is Neshamis and Malach. Then it creates its own Teda. Teres Atzilus is Kabbalah, even though it doesn't say here. Teres Abriya is Talmud, Teres Atzilus is Mishnah, Teres Asiya is Mika, even though it doesn't say here. It only mentions Talmud and Mishnah. And then it creates the brain of the next world. And the brain of the next world proceeds to create its own self, and its own Nevrayim, and its own Teda, and then the spheres of the next world. And again, the key is that what's negate to the Tanya is that there is an idea called Mahutz V'Atmas Aved Ein Sof, which is Nizgala in Nevrayim, just like the whole Neshama is in the human brain. The Mahutz V'Atmas Aved Ein Sof is Nizgala in each world. But it's in a state of Gilui. What does it mean? It's a state of Gilui that is the Madrega of Malchus as opposed to being, for example, the Madrega of Bina. That's the point. So now Pasha continues that conversation right in the middle of it. Then Malchus of Atzils goes to the Malchus of Bria. Now understand what he means over here. The Mahus V'Atmos of Ein Sof, which created Atzilus and created the Nivraim of Atzilus and created the Teda of Atzilus, then creates the Esses Sfiras of Atzilus, and it's mislabish in the Malchus of those 10 Sfiras. Malchus, those 10 Sfiras, this is the Shechina of Elam Abriya. Mislabeshes, and then it goes, then what does it do? It creates the world of Bria, the Nivraim of Bria, the Teda of Bria, and the Esses Sfiras of Yitzira. And Mislabeshes, Behechal Kedashim of Yitzira goes into the Chabad of Yitzira. Shu Chabad the Yitzira, Chabad the Yitzira. And then, Ubeyislab Shusan B'Malchus the Yitzira. It goes into Malchus the Yitzira. You understand? When is it called Shechina? Not when it's in the Esses Sfiras of a given world. Then it will be called Alma Diskasia. When it goes into Malchus of Yitzira, which is the last of the 10 Sfiras, which you would say in context would be the part of the brain which is Shayach al HaGilui on the one hand, and it's a place where there's a Gili of Mahus V'Atmas Ein Sof on the other, Malchus of Yitzira. This is where the Shechina is, and as a result, Neitzra Ruchas V'Hamalachim, it creates the spirits and the Malachim. Now what does Ruchas mean? It's hard to say Ruchas means Shadim, but I don't know. Should be Yitzira. V'gam in addition, Misham Hi HaMishnah Shalf, and then it creates the Mishnah, which is Tedas HaYitzira. Shehi, what makes Mishnah Tedas HaYitzira? Because it is Halachas Psukis, fixed Halachas, and Imshachas Gamkin, which come down also Mechabad Ein Sei Baruch from the same Ein Sof. Just like Talmud is Chabad, Mishnah is also Chabad. The difference is only the Chabad, the Chochma Bina Vadas of Mishnah. Shem Taimei Halachas, which are the explanations of Halachas, Hemelubashim Ugnuzim, are revealed and concealed, hidden. Begufi Halachas and Halachas themselves, like Bechinas Gila, not in a revealed state. So in Bria, you have Talmud. Talmud means the Svaras of the Halachas. In Yitzir, you have only the Halacha Psuka, not the Tam and the Svar. The Gufi Halachas, and these laws themselves, Shem Bechinas Gila, which are revealed. In Yitzira, Heinein Ha'aras HaMides, this is the revelation of the Eibishter's Mides, in other words, Chesed Din and Achamim, Chesed Lahakil and Vur Lahachmin and so forth. Shalein Seiv Baruch Hu, and he uses that word again, Bebechina Gilui. We're dealing here with Mahus V'Atmos Ein Sof in a state of Gilui, which is why it's Mislabash and Shechina and the Teir of Elam HaYitzira. Mission is Bayal Il B'Shem HaTikunim, as we said earlier in Tanya, in the name of the Tikkun is there. Again, I think it's Pedic Mem at the end, but Tachma the Rebbe writes Lamites. The shit Sfira and Mekanan and Yitzira, the 6 Sfiras, live in the world of Yitzira. Shehin Derechal, that in general the 6 are 3. Shnei Kav and Yamin V'Smel, the 2 pillars of right and left. Lahakum is to the Chesed, to be lenient from the side of Chesed. The Hainu Lahatir, to permit. What's the pshat to permit? To permit means do whatever you want. Zindik people the wills. No, permit means Sheyuchal La Leis Al Hashem. that you should take something from Klippas Neg and lift it up to the Eibishter. So lahata means to be lenient, but lahata also means to permit it to go up to the Eibishter. Or lahachmer v'chula, to be more severe, which means to be machmer, not allowed to do it, but alternatively it means that it cannot go up to the Eibishter. V'akel taket api chochmi lo atzilus. Its root is chochmi lo atzilus. Ubina v'das kul is ba, and in chochma v'atzilus you also have bina and das. Umiyuchadas be'ein seif baruch hu, and in chochma v'atzilus you have taka ein seif, which is the real mocker of Elokus and the real mocker of Teda. Ki b'teich kulan, because in all of the four brains of Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir, Nasi, and all of the four Shchinas, which is the beginning of the Gili of the Ein Sof, in each of the four worlds of Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir, Nasi, and in all of the four Tedas, which are revealed in all of the four Shchinas of all of the four worlds, you should know that Melubash is Chabad Atzilus, you have Chabad of Atzilus, that the Ein Sof is fully revealed with absolute union. In other words, there are worlds. The worlds are limited, like the fingers and toes and limbs and organs of a body. The chayes is distinct and limited. But there's a brain, and because the brain is the Teda of that world, and there's a specific level called the Shechita, which is the Gili of the Ein Sof. On the one hand, it's the whole Ein Sof. On the other hand, it's the union Gili. This is the Malchus of each world. But the bottom line is, Asiya has the same Ein Sof. But it goes through the steps. First Yitzira, then Bria, then Atzilus. Chaim b'derech in a similar fashion. Iyar, the Shechina itself descends in a slapsha and reveals itself b'hechel Kedesh Kedoshim d'Asiya in the next level, which is the Kedesh Kedoshim of Asiya, and the Teda of Asiya, which is Mikra. So you have a world, you have Nevraim of a world, and then you have a center. What's the center of the world? The Esesfidas, Chabad, culminating in Malchus, which is called Shechina, which is the Teda of that world, or the Gili of the Teda of that world. Zakter, each one of these three worlds divides itself up into myriads of different steps. Could also be called in a more precise and distinct and specific way. Individualized worlds. So even though we're saying it's only three worlds, but Pratius there's many worlds, so you have many limbs. And you should know that the klal of all of these three worlds is that Malchus, that Tzilos, Melubeshes, Malchus, Kolelim, Prati, Malchus of Atzilos goes into the Malchus of each individual world. And then as you read this, it descends in Mislabeshes and it reveals itself. First of all, Behechel Kedesh Kedoshim Shu Chabad Shu Em Shalom Atem, in the Kedesh Kedoshim, which is the Chabad of the world beneath it, and then from Chabad it goes to Shechina. When it comes into Shechina, it creates the Teda, and at that point it's called Gilu. So even though we're talking about Mahus V'Atzma Sein Sof, and Mahus V'Atzma Sein Sof, you can't really say Gilu, because Gilu always means Tzimtzum. And over here, we're talking about Mahus V'Atzma Sein Sof, which we really should call Hashra, not Gilu. He calls Gilu Legabe the way it is in Chabad. Legabe the way the Ein Sof, the Teda in Chabad, because it's Nizgala in the Teda of that world. What makes it Gilu? That you have Talmud, that you have Mishnah, and so forth. Hagor. That's the Malchuscha, your Malchus, aka Malchus of Atzilus, is Malchus Kolelamim. It's not Malchus of one world, it's Malchus of all the worlds. Because even though Malchus of Atzilus goes only into Bria, Chabad of Bria and then Malchus of Bria, but then it goes into Chabad of Yitzira and Malchus of Yitzira, and Chabad of Asiya and Malchus of Asiya, till Chabad of the physical Beis HaMikdash and the Malchus of the physical Beis HaMikdash, which happens to be the Mizbeach, B'tzarech V'hinei. The fact that the Shechina is revealed, and again over here revealed doesn't mean mamash revealed, but it's an inyan from Gilui, Legabe Chabad in each individual world. First of all, which is Chabad, and then into the Malchus, quality a prati general or specific. It draws down and expands from it. Light and life, to the world. The world is called Parsais, Medunim and Echolos. And the creations, the world which is Neshamas and Malachim v'Choli. So he just finished talking about the Pnimius, and now he's talking about the Chitanius, right? The Pnimius of the world is the Chabad of the world, and the Malchus of the world, and the Teid of the world. And the Chitanius would be the world itself, and then the Neshamas and Malachim live in that world. The world means, like you sample the earth. The Beis HaMikdash should be the brain, right? And then the Shechin would be the Gili in the Beis HaMikdash itself, and the Teid would also be the Gili in the Beis HaMikdash itself. The world would be the rest of the planet. Like I told you yesterday, Evan Shesiyah Sheven Hush, that's called Ha'elam, and in Evrayim, that means people and Lahakal animals. And the same is true in Ruchnius. Animals and Ruchnius are called Malachim. They're all created from the 10 utterances of the Ma'aseh Bereishis, Shem Dvara, the Shem, the words of the Eibush, and Nikah B'Shem Shechina, which is also called Shechina. What is the difference? The Shechina, the way it creates the Esses Sfiras of the next world. And the Teda is Mahus V'Atma Sein Sof in a state of Gili. The way it creates the worlds, it's like the brain is distributing chayas to individual limbs and organs of the body, and although the neshama may be infinite, the amount of chayas that each individual piece is going to get is going to be b'medida v'agbal. Right? So we've sort of worked it out as we've gone along. This is called Gilin, it's called Shechina L'gabe Chabad. But the emissaries are even atzmos. It's also Mahus V'Atzmos Ein Sof, which is found in each one of the worlds, and it's Begili Mamish. Now I told you yesterday that I wanted to touch on this business about Talmud and Mishnah. So the Rebbe brings in the Tanya itself two steers. In some places it says Mikra is Asiya, Mishnah is Yetzira, Talmud is Bria, and Kabbalah is Atzilus. And I'm also forget that Mikra is Atzilus, and the Mishnah is Bria, and Talmud is Yetzira, and Kabbalah is Asiya. The Nekuda is that there's two ways to look at Torah. The one way of looking at Torah is the package. What's Torah? It's a package that brings godliness into this world. What's the point of being a package? You don't see what's inside, so it doesn't blow you up. But through this package, it's here. If you look at it in those terms, in other words, the way Alakus is concealed, or revealed and concealed in Torah, like we discussed 2 days ago from the Genius of Test, then you would say that Mikra is Asiyah. Because in this world, we only learn Chumash. In other words, we don't understand anything. We don't understand one word. The person says Mikra. The halach is, you don't even know the title of the words. You're Makayim the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. The package of Mikra is so behelim, you don't have to understand what you're saying, and simply by saying the words, the Eibush is an Asiyah. Mishnah, you have to understand. But all your understanding is what to do, not why. Not the lomdis, not the pilpul, not the arichet, not the shakabatay, not the malchamta shalteda. Just the Allah Psukkah. This package brings Alakus into Eilam Ayitzira. Talmud is much more scholarly. You understand much deeper the taimei halachas and the back end halachas, and this is a package that brings most atzmos into Eilam Abriya. Now understand, Mahus v'atzmos ein sof is a lot more than taimei halachas. Talmud is called davar cotton, and Mahus v'atzmos ein sof is called davar gadol. Davar cotton avoy is the Bible of, and davar gadol is ma'aseh makov ma'aseh breishis. Primitz atayre ein sof is much more than Talmud, but nevertheless it's a much more sophisticated package. And Atzilus, the package is Kabbalah. Kabbalah is Pashta Lakus. In Atzilus, the package is revealing, so to speak. But the other way of looking at it is how much Alakus is revealed. And when you look at it and how much godliness is revealed, it's exactly the opposite. That Mikra has the most godliness in it. You don't see it and I don't see it, but there's the most godliness in Mikra. V'haraya, what's Kabbalah based on? The same psukim. Everything is the psukim. So the godliness that's packaged in Mikra, even though you don't see it at all, is the deepest madeh of godliness. So from this point of view, you say Mikra is Atzilus. Mishnah is Halacha Psuk. Halacha Psuk is Ratzin Ha'elyin, which is higher than Seich. In other words, we say Dvar Havaya is higher than... In other words, Mishnah has more godliness in it than Talmud. That's why you say Mishnah is Neshama. You don't say Talmud is Neshama. Because in Mishnah, even though you're understanding, but in Mishnah you feel the holiness of the Eibishter much more than in Talmud. In Talmud you feel much more the Seichel level of Alakus. So in terms of Giloi, Mishnah, there's more Atzmus in Mishnah than there is in Talmud. Just like there's more Atzmus in Mikra than there is in Mishnah. And Talmud has more Atzmus than in Kabbalah. Now that doesn't make any sense. Why? Because in Kabbalah the godliness is revealed. In Talmud, the godliness is not so revealed. The godliness that could be revealed is lower than the godliness which is concealed even in Talmud. In other words, you learn Talmud, you learn Lomdis, you learn Svares, you learn Papulim, you learn Kashit, you learn Terutzim, you're learning Diyukim, you're learning, but the Alakus which is concealed in Talmud, although it's much more concealed because there's Seichel to block it, in Mishnah there's no Seichel to block it. It's Kishalachas. But there's more godliness in Talmud even than there is in Kabbalah. So you have these 2 points of view. In our Tanya is talking about the package. Because the whole Chiddush is 2 points. Point number 1 is that godliness is here. And point number 2, the godliness is concealed here so it shouldn't destroy the world. So Kabbalah is in Atzilus, and Talmud is in Bria, and Mishnah is in Yetzirah, and Talmud is in Mikra is in Asiyah. But when you talk about the Gilu, it's Punkt Fakir.